everyone, welcome to this episode of the Performance Cafe. How long am I going to get that wrong? I'm Innocent and I'm your host at the Performance Cafe, and we talk about improving performance in business using coaching and positive psychology approaches. And this week we are going to be talking about my favorite subject, and that is coaching and judgment. So how come that's a favorite subject, you ask? Well,
I didn't catch that. Could you try again?
Oh, hello, Siri. No, thank you. That's interesting.
Okay.
Right, now we know. I feel like I should just start all over again today. This is when it's one of those days where a live recording feels a bit risky. So we're going to be talking about coaching and judgment. Now, this came from a talk I gave a couple of months ago, and someone raised their hand in the audience, and they said, but come on, don't you guys judge us the whole time? You know, you're sitting there, you're talking about things in your life. He says, maybe, the person's coaching you is slightly older than you, different gender, whatever the case may be. Aren't you really just sitting there and judging us? And I thought that was actually such a good question. So the easy answer is no, we don't judge. But stick around so that I can explain to you why and how this happens. How's the system built to actually protect you? So firstly, I think when it comes to judging, the one thing that really stands out for me is that when I judge someone, there must be a power differential. There must be something that makes me more or better than you. So, for example, someone could judge because they are a manager. They can judge a team leader. I don't think they should, but this is the way we see it happening, right? And what happens there is someone says, I know how to do this better. I've done this more, or I have more information, whatever the case may be. And in coaching, there just isn't that kind of power differential. So I think that's kind of the first thing just to kick off with. And I think that some of that comes from therapy, where we see in videos the therapist sitting with a little notebook in the corner, asking questions, making notes that you can't see. They are sitting on a single chair. They're not sitting next to you. It all is to create a clinical presence and a distance. But sometimes it can also feel like, well, this person studied for 7 years. Maybe they've got the title of doctor. And we then, in our own minds, assume that there is a power differential, whether there's one or not. And I think with coaching, it's even less so, because I think coaching is a much less clinical. It's professional, but it's much less clinical in its approach. So that's the first thing, the first way to think about it. The second way to think about it is that as coaches, when we are, I want to say proper coaches, it sounds so snooty, but when we are coaches that are aligned to organizations with a code of ethics, you will often see in that code of ethics. So, for example, I'm aligned to the International Coaching Federation, or the ICF, and you will see that they have a coaching ethics code. And in that coaching ethics code, it actually says a couple of things. And those things are the competencies that we are trained to use when coaching. And one of those things is that actually the client is the expert in their lives. Now, what happens there is it doesn't help I'm sitting judging you about whether you're doing this right or wrong. What I am sitting and doing is I'm seeing, what's the picture you're drawing for me? And where do I see gaps? And can I offer you that perspective to see whether you think that will work, or whether you're interested in finding a way to make that work in your environment? My favorite example, and it is so applicable because of the great diversity we have in South Africa, is that just because I am the person who you're coming to see does not mean that I'm the person with the answers. For example, if we have two different cultures in a room, which culture is the right one and the wrong one? Who gets to judge? Well, that's why you actually cannot judge. That is why you say that person is the expert in their culture, and therefore I listen to their story and I try and take their perspective, but layer on some of my understanding so that I can see if I can open ways in which they can use their reality better. And I'll tell you why we do this. Well, firstly, because it works darn well. The other reason we do this is because we cannot decide for other people. If we could, no child would ever bunk school. No one would ever smoke. No one would ever do anything wrong according to someone else. Doesn't work that way. Think of it like going to the gym. We go to the gym. We get the gym membership. We think we've decided because we're a bunch of friends, we're going to exercise together. Right. How long does that last? Sometimes months, sometimes years. But each individual must decide for themselves to stay in that loop. It doesn't help someone else decide for them. That is when people come up with excuses. So in coaching, we don't impose as the coach our ideas on people. We ask them whether they can adjust to a concept, whether they'd like to, take up a principle. We never tell them because it doesn't work. People have to decide for themselves what works in their reality and what they're prepared to commit to. The other thing about this is that there's this concept, you'll hear that coaches often speak about, we're going to co-create the solution. It's such a buzzword amongst us, but actually it's a word that's very close to our hearts. The reason for this is because we do not ask you to come in so we can diagnose you. We ask you to come in so that we can be a mirror for you, a thought partner, in order to experiment and see how do we go about solving the challenge that is top of mind to you. Now, we can't do that while we're busy judging you, because while we are judging you, we are too busy thinking things outside of the conversation, and that upsets our process, because our process is really based on being present and really listening and understanding and asking good questions. I can't judge while I'm doing that, because to judge, I have to step out and frame something that is outside of what is happening between us at that point. And that's the other reason also that judging just doesn't work. It's because we've got something called presence. You know, when you're talking to someone and they're like doing this, but you can see they're not in the room with you, right? The moment that happens, people pick it up. Even more so when you're only two people sitting in a coaching conversation and you're the only other person. Because you see, all of our biological filters are there to pick up how people are responding to us, how people are attending to us. So even if you're not judging, even if you just blank out for a couple of seconds, people pick it up. And the moment they pick it up, you are disrupting their flow and you're actually closing down the options that they have. Another principle in coaching that means that we don't judge is that we actually judge, and you'll see it whether it's in our personal statements, whether it's in the statements of the organizations we align to. We believe in the potential of people. So for me to judge, if the coachee comes in and they go, I'm having this problem, I'm supposed to go, no, don't tell me come on, you didn't do that, did you? So in coaching, we don't worry as much about what has happened as about how do we grow from this? How do we learn and then implement the learnings so that we avoid that happening again? So from that perspective, because I'm so focused on tapping your potential, I can't judge you, because while I'm judging you, I'm taking time away from understanding what is in that. Imagine a human is like a diamond. Think of all those little facets. I want to work so that we can take the right facets and put them to work in the right places to help this person help themselves, to learn new stuff and unlearn old stuff. So from that perspective, I can't judge you while I am busy trying to identify the facets that I can show you. And then the last reason why we don't judge, and honestly, I think this is, to me, the most important and the easiest one, is that very often people are so busy judging themselves that the last thing they need is more judgment. honestly, the amount of times people have come to me in shame, in embarrassment, because of something that they felt they couldn't do, that they somehow just decided was the right thing for them to do, or, was within their capability. They're so busy judging themselves that it's just easy to go back to the first point I mentioned. Create safe space for them to show up so that we can exploit the facets and I can be truly present and understand what is happening in this person's environment, in their culture, in all of them, so that when I do open my mouth and say something, because coaching is pretty much a listening game, when I do open my mouth and I ask a question or I make a comment, that I'm actually doing something that is so aligned that person knows I'm entirely on their team. And so you see, there isn't much room for judgment. And even if someone does judge, it's very easy to find out if they are, because you're going to realize as the person in the room, as the coachee, what's happening here. And that is why we have things like chemistry sessions, because in chemistry sessions, we have a quick little 20 or 30-minute chat with someone, just to see, do we match? Do we work together? Can we make this work? If not, go and find another coach. There are so many of us, and the right coach is out there for you. One that not only has good chemistry with you, but one that also won't judge. And so, as I close off for today, I want to offer a couple of chemistry sessions out there. So if you're reading this and you don't know me and you'd like to have a chemistry session with me, just pop me a DM on LinkedIn, where you can find me. You can probably find me on Facebook as well. LinkedIn is my favorite, and we'll see. We'll set something up. That is it for now. If you've enjoyed this, as always, we download these and we write blogs about them. You can find those on performforward.com, which is my business's website. You can also find this on YouTube. And of course, you can always add all of your lovely comments, responses, and questions on LinkedIn, Facebook, on our YouTube page. We are there for you. Short and sweet today. That's us. And yeah, I look forward to seeing you at the Performance Campaign.